Okay, awesome. So it looks like if everybody has it downloaded, we'll hop right into Fusion. It's currently loading right now, so I'll share my screen once I have it pulled up. Our focus for today is going to be kind of going over the basics of parametric CAD. So we'll go over things like spatial awareness and sketches and planes, and just kind of the basics of forming objects, and then kind of the UI and workspace as well, because some things in Fusion, it has a lot of features, but it might be kind of hard to find them. So we'll go over things like that as well. Okay, awesome. It's almost loaded. Okay, is everybody able to see my screen?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Sweet, perfect. So this is basically an untitled project that gets opened whenever you open up Fusion. And so here's kind of your workspace. Over here you can see all of the various document settings, and when you make objects, they'll also pop up here as well, either as bodies or components. We'll get to the difference of those in a little bit. There's also your origin. So you have your respective like X, Y, Y, Z, all those planes, and then your respective axes. And then this is just where you can kind of modify your orientation. You can either drag this cube around or use the orbit command to rotate around your workspace. Oops. There we go. Not sure why the grid isn't there anymore, but let's see. Oops. Okay, perfect. So the first thing we're talking about, there are these concepts called sketches. And so a sketch is defined on a plane, and it's kind of where you might draw out a profile of your object. There are other things that use like surfaces, forms, and meshes to create more complex shapes. But for beginners, we'll be going over kind of sketch-based modeling because it's a very simple way to make complex objects. So this is the button to create a sketch. You can define a sketch on any plane. So what we're going to do is create a sketch and then select our XY plane. And then it always will move your view so that you're normal to the plane that you're creating a sketch on. And so one thing you might have noticed is that some of your tools up here change. So now they're mostly in 2 dimensions. So you can draw things like lines, rectangles, circles. Other geometric shapes include things like text. And then there are other tools to help in terms of setting constraints for your model, as well as rounding edges and modifying properties of sketches as well. So what we're going to be doing today is basically just making a pencil. It's a common household object that everybody kind of knows about. So if we're thinking of making a pencil, basically by slicing it and what's called extruding a profile, does anybody know kind of what our sketch might look like? If you were thinking of a pencil and you made a slice through it, what would that shape be?
A circle, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so for the eraser, we have a circle. If it's one of those like fancy yellow Ticonderogas, then it's like a hexagon. So what we can do is just click our circle tool, and then that'll give us, you can define a circle with a point and then diameter. So my workspace is currently in millimeters, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and maybe we'll define that to be like 10. I'll just actually zoom out so I can see what's going on. And so now we have our circle, right? And so this is just in 2 dimensions. This is our sketch. And so if we go back over to the solid tab, we now have different options for what we can do with this sketch. And so can you guys also all see the drop down on Fusion?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
I don't see the planes, where you choose XY planes. I don't see those.
Okay. Are you able to see the what would those be called? The our like standard basis vectors and planes in the middle right here? Yes, no, maybe so. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if I caught
Computer
that.
is, yeah. So I cannot see them.
Okay. So you're in Fusion right now.
Um,
Okay, awesome. And what's probably happening is I bet this eyeball next to origin is unclicked. So go and look in kind of this left-hand bar and see if you can toggle the eyeball to be on, so that then you can see all of the like coordinate axes and origin as well. Did that work?
it worked. So that should be good to go. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, now that we have kind of our sketch, we can just start with the eraser. I guess that's probably a good place to start. So what we can do is select the extrude tool. You can either do the drop down, create, and go to extrude, or just click this. And then we're gonna click what's called the profile of our sketch. So that's gonna be this blue, it'll highlight blue whatever feature you're selecting. So in this case, we have like our bounded circle that we just made. And then you can specify how many millimeters you want this to be extruded, or you can drag it as well. And some features that we'll be covering later on in later lessons are you can choose like 2 different sides and specify 2 different distances, or you can do symmetric, different things like that. For this case, we'll just be doing one side and we'll be starting from the profile plane. And why don't we define that to be something like 12, maybe 8 millimeters. That looks like the eraser of a pencil. Let me just toggle. There are some display settings that you can toggle. So I'm just going to have it show the edges as well, so it's a little bit clearer. Any questions so far? Okay, awesome. So that's our eraser. One thing we can kind of do now is add what's called a fillet. So that will round our edges and we can make it kind of look like the end of a pink eraser on a pencil. So that's over in Modify. So there's also things like chamfer, which is kind of a more geometric fillet, draft, scale, combine. So we'll go ahead and press fillet. And then we're gonna click this bottom edge of our cylinder. And then here is where you specify what's called a fillet radius. And so this just kind of indicates the degree of curvature. So if we entered in something like 5, you can see it gets very rounded. It doesn't quite look like an eraser, so we can kind of play around with the values. Maybe something like 1 or 2 is good for this instance. And so the next thing we're going to want to do is pencils have kind of that little like metal clip that connects the wooden part to the eraser, right? So what we can do is next make that. And so what we're going to do is select the top face of our cylinder. So it should be highlighted blue. And then what we can do is create a sketch on that plane. And now we're going to be working with kind of our silver portion. And the reason that we're kind of making these in different bodies, there are lots of different ways that you could do it, but this will make it easier when we kind of make it look nice, I guess, so to speak, which isn't always necessary, especially if you're 3D printing something, but we'll show you kind of the basics of adding features and like materials and appearances to your sketch today, or object today. Yeah, so what we're going to do is create another circle. This one will also be centered about the origin. And what we can do is make this one just a little bit bigger than the last one that we made. So we'll make it like 10.5 millimeters. And hit enter. And then if we go down here and click the orbit button, what we can do is manipulate our field of view so that we can kind of see the profiles that we made. If you mouse over here, you can see we have our outer boundary, which is infinite, so we can't select it. Then we have this inner portion formed by the two concentric circles, and then we have our innermost circle as well. And so to create this metallic part in our pencil, what we're going to do is select this inner one as well as this outer one. And to do a multi-select, what you can do is press down the Shift key and select both of them, and they should both be highlighted. And then we can go over to Solid, and we're going to click Extrude again. And we want to make sure that this is set to New Body once we extrude it, because we want these to be separate features. And so now we can try making this something 10. Yeah, I think that'll be a good one. And so you can see when you extruded it, this might have changed to join. So we just want to go down and select New Body again, just to make sure. And then we'll click OK, and that'll kind of complete our feature. Any questions so far? Too fast, too slow? Questions about any features, maybe? Okay, awesome.
Sorry, well,
yeah.
what if I make a mistake? How do I modify that dimension after you click enter?
Oh yeah, for sure. So down here, you can kind of see the progression of your workspace for this current project. So if I wanted to edit this extrude, what I can do is right click on it and then click edit feature. And so this will allow me to edit anything about this extrude. So I could change the distance, the direction. If maybe I didn't want to create a new body, I could click join so that it connected it. Yeah, so this is kind of how you go back and edit things. I'll click cancel because I don't want to edit it, but likewise, you can also go into a past sketch and either show them or modify them as well. And so yeah, anything down here can be modified, as well as later on we'll look at modifying bodies. So like things like appearance and material, or renaming things just to kind of streamline your workflow. Yeah, awesome. So the next thing that we're going to do is create another sketch as we're kind of building this pencil sequentially. Now we're going to work on that hexagonal kind of wooden part. So what we can do is go to create, and then we have polygon, and you can either choose a circumscribed or inscribed polygon. In this case, probably inscribed polygon is easier. And so this just defines...
Thank you.
No worries. This just defines a polygon that has two input features. You can see kind of the radius of the polygon, so from the center to an endpoint, and then the number of points on the polygon. So like here's a hexagon 6, you could do octagon 8, you could do some crazy number that's basically a circle, or like even a triangle, anything like that. So in this case, what we're going to do is 6. And I'm just going to drag this so that it's barely kind of touching the edges of our metal part. So it looks like 5 millimeters is going to be a good dimension for that. And then I'll just click enter. And then what I'm going to do is click the orbit tool, and then once again alter our field of view so that we can kind of get a gauge on how far we're going to want to extrude this. So going back to solid, we can click on extrude. And what we're going to do is this one, you can kind of drag it just because it's more of a visual thing. And what we're going to do is actually leave some room at the end, because we're effectively going to like sharpen our pencil, if that makes sense, by using the revolve tool. So I think in my case, like 180 millimeters looks about right, maybe something like 170. So yeah, we'll extrude that to 170 millimeters. And so right now we kind of have our unsharpened pencil. And so what we can do now is actually add in, we could add in the lead, like model the lead of the pencil. So why don't we go ahead and do that, just because we do have some time today and we can show off some different features. So I'm going to create a sketch off of the top of my pencil. And so we want to effectively create a cylinder. for our pencil lead. And so I'm going to make a circle of 2 millimeters and then alter my field of view. And then just select that profile again. You can see also, since this sketch was created on this face, that includes the end of the hexagon. It also includes those features as well. So we just go back to solid and extrude. The height of our pencil, we ended up choosing 170. So you can just choose, we'll want to do negative 170 because we're effectively going to cut this out. But what we can instead choose, actually what we'll do is we'll cut it first and then we'll create a new body. So go ahead and click OK. And the other thing we can do is, you might notice that this is currently one body, what's supposed to be our metal part as well as the wooden part. So I'm going to go back to the extrude that we did to make the wooden part of the pencil and just go to edit feature and make that into a body instead. So we're going to alter what it says under operation and click OK. And so now we should have our 3 bodies for our pencil. Any other questions, or too fast or too slow? Okay, awesome. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to just interrupt, jump in, whatever. And so now we need to make the body that represents our pencil lead. So what we can do is, your screen probably looks something like this right now. So if we go over to our sketches and click this drop-down menu, we can see all the past sketches that we've made. So we're going to want to enter back into the last one that we made. So in this case, sketch 4, and click the eyeball so that we can see it. And now if we zoom in on the top of our pencil, we can once again select this profile. And so what we're going to do is just extrude that down, so negative 170. And Fusion is really smart, so it'll kind of sense that it wants to join it because it perfectly meets the boundaries of our pre-existing bodies. So what we can instead do is make it a new body so that we kind of know that that's the pencil lead in our model. And then we'll click OK. And then what we can do is finally kind of sharpen our pencil. So what we're going to do for this is click this edge face. So any side of your hexagonal prism, I guess, we'll select that and create a sketch. And then what we're going to do is just create another profile that we're going to end up revolving. Essentially. And so that's another tool similar to Extrude that'll help you kind of manipulate a 2D sketch to have a 3-dimensional effect. So the first thing we're going to do is, okay. So what I just realized was we're actually not in the place that we would want our sketch to be. We want it to be kind of perfectly bisecting this hexagon. So we're going to learn how to make a plane. So what we can do is just click Finish Sketch. You could either delete this one too, since it doesn't have anything in it. You just right-click on Sketch and then delete. Because we're going to want to make a plane so that we can perfectly revolve it around this central axis. So what we can do is go to Construct, and this allows you to make different types of planes based on features of your object, and also points and other things like that. So what we can do is select mid-plane, and then this lets you select 2 planes and basically puts a third plane that it creates right in the middle of them. So we're going to select one side of our hexagonal prism, use the orbit tool, rotate around, and then select the immediate opposite side. And so that'll create our central plane that we're then going to create our sketch on. And so we're just going to hit OK. And now we have this plane that we can create our sketch on. And now we can make our profile to revolve. So I guess in this case, we'll want to kind of make it proportional to the rest of the pencil. So what we can do is draw a center line. And this will later become our axis of rotation for our revolution. And then what we can do is just draw a line immediately perpendicular that then intersects this edge of our, or we can make it a bit farther, because in this case it doesn't really have to be exact, and we'll just meet this center point to kind of make our triangle. And so when you're sharpening a pencil, we want to cut away these edges. If we revolve this triangle right now, it would cut out that cone essentially from our pencil, and that's not what we want. So what we're going to do is connect some lines. So like our top center line, we can make a bounding box so that we get this outer profile. And so now you should be able to select this profile in your sketch, and it should be shaded when you mouse over it. That kind of tells you that the sketch is complete. Sometimes you might have dangling edges. So like, for example, if we just had this, that doesn't define any two-dimensional closed shape. So you can't basically do anything with the solid features with it. And so when you're making a sketch, you always kind of want to make sure that if you're going to end up using it, that it has this shaded feature. And so now we're going to go back over to solid, and we're actually going to use a different tool than extrude. We're going to expand create, and there's a tool right beneath extrude called revolve. And so like the helpful description says, it just revolves a sketch profile around a selected axis. And so that's what we're going to do to sharpen our pencil. So we can select revolve and then select this profile that we made. And then here it takes a bit more like inputs, I guess, than extrude. So what we can do is click the select button by axis, and we just want to select that center line that we created. And now that'll sharpen our pencil. And so we also want to make sure that this is set to cut as the operation. If we made it join, it would extrude that profile and make it into a solid body, which sometimes can be useful. In our case, we're going to want to cut it, and we'll just click OK. And so now we have kind of the top of our pencil. And so you could also alter that sketch if you wanted, maybe a sharper point, something like that. But yeah. And so we can also deselect this sketch just so that we don't see it. And so now if we also expand our bodies tab, we should see that we have a body for our eraser, the metal part, our wooden body, and then the lead as well. And so what we can do is if you double click each of these entities, you should be able to rename them. So we're just going to rename them for ease of use. So I'll call body 1 eraser, double click on body 2 and call it metal part, very descriptive, lovely name. The wooden part, we can just call that wooden part. And then we'll call our last body just lead. And then you could also rename, or maybe you can't rename the bodies folder, but when we save this, we'll call it pencil. Any questions? Anybody stuck on a feature maybe, or get an error from Fusion that says like invalid geometry or anything like that?
My pencil came back pretty stubby. So can you go through one of your past sketches and tell me how to like edit the sketch?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you either, do you want to elongate the pencil or like make part of it bigger or smaller?
Like the revolve part where
Right.
like the actual lead cutout was.
Mhm.
The first triangle I was making.
Yeah, sure. So what we can do is something I like to do, because it's kind of hard to remember, like, was sketch 4 the feature I want to change? Was sketch 6? If you just kind of untoggle it, you can kind of visually identify if that's the sketch in question. So like in my case, it's sketch 6. And what I can do is right click on that sketch and go to edit. And so it'll alter my view so that I'm normal to the sketch plane. And then if I wanted my pencil to look differently, we can just alter these constraints. So one thing is kind of the easiest way is you can just select a line and then hit the delete button or backspace, and it'll automatically delete it. So right here we have kind of this bounding box. So if we want a less stubby pencil, we can also select this lower line and delete it. And then what we'll do is just kind of expand our bounding box. And then we just select that top point, and then we can draw a new triangle so that maybe our pencil comes out a bit less stubby. And then the process is very similar. Sometimes Fusion will recognize like that you just made this bigger and it'll keep your revolve. So like in this case it did, and it just sharpened my pencil in the same way. If that feature disappears, you can perform the revolve again. Later on in different lessons, we'll go over what's called parametric modeling, where like you could change this input and it would react, like everything else would move around it so that you don't always have to redo features. That's really nice in terms of adding constraints and kind of streamlining your workflow. Any other questions? Okay, awesome. So now we're going to go over kind of one of the fun parts in terms of just how you can render your object and make it look realistic in Fusion. So what we're going to do is first we'll alter the eraser. And so if you right click the body, you get this drop down of different things you can do, like you can move it in your world coordinate system, create it, make it into a component, which we'll touch upon in more lessons. And then alter like the physical material and appearance. So what we're going to do is just alter the appearance. And so this lets us kind of change our color. So this tab should pop up and you have all of these different like default appearances that Fusion supplies you with, which is really cool because they're quite diverse. So in this case, they might have like a pink rubber one, but in this case, we can just kind of use our plastic ones and modify the colors to make it look like a pink eraser. This is also the move tool that just lets you kind of grab your workspace and move around. So in this case, we can just select ABS white and drag it onto our bottom eraser. And that's not the color that we want. So what we can do is double click this and it should come up with like a little RGB selector. So I'm just gonna drag this over to pink and then pick a nice like school pencil eraser color. And then after that, we can go ahead and click done. And then this appearance tab, you can use it to modify the appearance of any of your components. So what we can do is, since this metal part, we know that we want it to look like metal, we can just go to metal and then maybe aluminum, and then just select one that you kind of like. I always like the polished ones, but whatever you want your pencil to look like, we can drag that in there. And then for the yellow pencil part, we can once again go down to plastic and then select ABS white, drag it over, and then alter this color. And then you might notice that on a normal pencil, just the outer layer is going to be yellow, right? Because it's wood that's painted. So we can go back and modify that feature so that we actually get it to look like a pencil, basically. But for now, just select your yellow color and then we'll click done. And finally, we just want the pencil lead. So I'll just double click and make that like a nice grayish black. And then we'll go ahead and click done and close. And so there's pretty much our pencil, just the tip looks kind of off. So this brings up kind of an important part of CAD, which is you want to model in such a way that it's not annoying to go back and fix something if you need to. So what we can do is actually go back in time to when we just had our pencil look like this. So it looks unsharpened. And what we're going to do is model the effect of having the wood, basically. So we can click this top plane and do create sketch. And what we're going to do is use the offset tool just so that we can make a little bit of a gap and then extrude it down to create our wooden feature. So offset just selects a pre-existing feature and then offsets the boundary either in an outwards direction, or you can specify it to be inwards. So in this case, we're going to do something like negative 0.05, or you could even go smaller, just for the look of the paint. And then we'll hit enter. And so now we have kind of our inner and outer boundaries. So we're going to select the inner one. And then what we can do is go to solid and just extrude this negative 170 millimeters. And that's going to cut out that shape. And so we'll hit enter. And then that'll process. And great, now we just don't have the wooden part. So what we can do is show that sketch that we just made and select what we just extruded and extrude it once again to negative 170. But in this case, we'll create a new body that we can texture like wood. And so we'll go ahead and hit OK. And if we drag forward, oops. Let's go ahead and add, we can update this name to be like inner wooden part. And then we can go to appearance. And then underneath the wood part, I'm going to make mine maybe oak. Move appearance, black bodies, cancel. If I add it there, perfect. Then we can go to close. And so there's our pencil that kind of simulates like having the paint on the outside. And so if we drag forward, we can see it looks like something went wrong, right? So it didn't chop this body. And that's because at the time that that revolution happened, that body didn't exist. So it doesn't know that it's there. So a simple fix is if we go into edit feature on that revolve, and then what we want to do is just make sure that our new inner wooden part is also selected on that thing that we want to cut. And so we can hit OK, hide that last sketch, collapse these, and now we've got our finished pencil. So yeah, any questions at all? Any things that kind of didn't make sense? Stumbling points? Okay, awesome. If not, this has all been recorded, so you can reference the video later. If you have any other questions, if you did follow along and make a pencil, I'd highly recommend sending a picture in our Fusion 360 channel, just because that's where we're going to be kind of sharing what we make in these lessons every week. So yeah, and then I guess we can go over the process of exporting it as a STL, just because that is something that you'd want to do in the 3D Printing Club. So the first thing we can do is go to Save, and then I'm just going to call this Pencil. You can save it in whatever directory you want. Click Save, and then it'll have these version numbers as you make modifications. That's also helpful if you want to go like back in time and see what was going on. And then there is a way to export it as an STL here, but this kind of does a full render of the entire geometry, so it can take kind of a lengthy amount of time. So what I usually do is go to document settings, and then you can go to save as STL. And so this will save anything that's kind of visible as an STL. So let's say that we just wanted to maybe print one component. What you could do is unselect each one. Maybe we just want to print that wooden part, and then you could export just that part. You might also, yeah, you can also select it just on the individual body. That works too. So if we go to document settings, we can go to save as STL, and then all of these defaults are perfectly fine. So you just go to OK, and then it'll kind of pop up what you want to name it as, where you want to save it, that type of thing. Yeah, I guess, is there any specific like topics that you guys would be interested in for these lessons? I know a lot of you guys are working on personal projects, things like that. So we could go over, like Fusion has scripts to make gears and other like mechanical components. Or if you guys were interested in other things, like importing SVGs and working with other things like that, we could totally make some lessons geared towards that.
This isn't related to that, but I haven't used Discord before. So what section are the lessons going to be posted under?
Okay, for sure. We'll post links to, we just upload them to our YouTube channel, so I'll post the link in the Fusion channel, and then also they'll be posted on our website underneath the education tab.